there, and I've written about it, as Alan said. There's a version of that on my blog at the moment, actually. And I'm going to read from the log of the Cimmerian, which is in two separate parallel discourses. I'm trying not to use the word, they're not versions of one another. There's a prose log, it's printed here, and then there's the one in 3 lines, or actually, if you can see that, you can see that actually one long line, and he's used the ancient orthography, or whatever you want to call it, of dots. But there's sorts of haikus. Bill told Tony Baker there were sorts of haikus that he thought, syllable count didn't really work in English, so he thought it would be best to alliterate, which made my task much harder. So I'm quite tongue-twisted this. But I thought I'd read the log to give you a sense of what's happening. Because there's a narrative. Once you get the narrative, the poem is kind of falls into place, as it were. And the narrative is taking Alf's boat from somewhere in the locks inside London, through the London barriers, round the coast to Essex, and some pretty hairy things happen. Hinted at there. But I'll read the first one. You can tell that maybe this wasn't the most prepared voyage ever. The first prose log, then I'll read the sea shanties. Friday the 18th of July, 86, Cowley to Bull's Bridge. As Alf's project to move the Cimmerian to Essex got underway, there proved few enough crew. There was Alf himself, Steve from Colchester, and myself, determined to try, however. Friday was spent preparing the Cimmerian, with the inboard ferry diesel unreassembled. A 25 horsepower Crescent Volvo Penta outboard was bought second hand and needed a lot of attention. A defective link in the gear transmission was corrected, the water cooling ducts unblocked, the motor was then mounted on wooden blocks, secured to the rudder, and steering wires to the rudder reconnected, while I got in supplies for 2 or 3 days at sea. And at 2200 hours, we set off. After only 50 yards, the steering cables snapped free, and the boat ploughed shoulder first into the bank. Then a satisfactory way of securing the travelling cables was worked out, and a standby tiller inserted ready in the rudder, and the boat proceeded to Bull's Bridge, and thus on. So this is the sea shanty version of that. Locked in the beauty. Locked into the beauty, locked in the beauty. Swelling, the sea swell, at the tape of the boat, tapping and turning, a tower of noise. Fishing, the night fishermen set out houses of lighted floats, bright floats, bobbing in the black. Blundering, to be blunt about it, in the darkest bits of the canal, night-bound, bound into a blind alley. Stinking, the trumpet of daylight sets us moving on the motor, rocking through the locks, through London. Galloping goats above the boat, tall, horned and ibex-like, behind tall wires, and opposite an opera cage of birds. Lounging at one lock, I buy a twister, a fish lure, big as a fish fist, from a kid out the cut. Shouting when I show the map, because of the routes you can take out, the choice of out routes, vowing that it has to be bowlocks. Riding in the dialogue of Bow Top, taking a moment to sleep, a minute of sleep, tiring in the high-level lone place for the tide. And poised below, tide side of Bow, on the pouring tide, feeling its flood, able anxious to accept it with the light set. Banging, the boat leapt out, on its treacherous little motor, magically mute, a scary shooting down. How to stop? Tugging at the tough stems of these slope plants. I try to rest our pace. Startled and with a smacking sound, they start from the wall, rootless. In the black cocoa of Bow Creek, the pudding masters take a thick streak, striping and brand the bow. Repowered, a power run down Bow Creek, right, with the steering working, having steerage. Overcoming the canyon, out to the broadest ways. Parading through the pride of Greenwich. Choosing a gate through the barrier, how grand a gateway, and, stunningly, no one stops us. Tumbling to trouble, now we lose our way again in the reaches, unpowered, making a poor mazurka round and slow round. Which way? Seeking to see the true Thames Channel. Now at night, pylons light and line it, tall pyres of bulbs, branding the banks out as it swings erratically. Listen, the slight sombre showing up of day, and the massed furniture of the docks half missed, as slowing we go down past Canvey. Standing stranded, the long South End pier long and strong, embedded with the bulk of a smashed wreck on its east. Chopping the choppy waters of the mouth as we make the estuary out to the wider water, and the blaring, blasting tankers and mountainous wake. Anchoring, letting the anchor out, shallowish the sea but hard to see, clouded with the same clouds as a sub-blue sky. Waking in the way of the tide, now we ride on a cascading sea, deep and then high, tumbling about. In this tumble, who will bring the anchor on board? Calming to a sweet, calm sea. It seems safer a lot here by the Maplins, ever evener, steadying. We are steady now on the bottom, stuck. Gliding away from the gilded sand. Now the tide has left us to wait, watch for the new water. Stranded on the large sands, step out and see it all. Walking, the walkers of the sea, at a fast pace approach, and faster, running the race of the sea around us again as the light falters. Deepening, the deepest water yet, over and by the sunken Buxey beacon, past her, rushing over the waving buoyant water. The gibber at the eye of fluorescent shrimps passing by, skipping under against the ship. Stopped, stretching with all the strength of our arms, the figurey busty outboard rises to us, trying not to, as tricky as a mermaid, against mending. Going on to guess the lights, the powerful draw of the power station. Dawning, day shows by it the modest St. Peter Bradwell. Calling with the horn in my gob, aghast at 4 Mammuthian tankers lined up straight at us, till I see them riding to the tide, like us, anchored up. Spurting and spuming, the lovely motor steers us across the estuary, crossing, making for the marked Colne Channel. So sure, sailing up the dark side of the mountain, sailing down the bright. Signing with cymbals and pipe as we home on the hard like pantomime, portending the end. Alf and boat, proud as apples, on the fine sun field of Brightlingsea, boat starred. Thank you.